Hi everyone. So this demonstration, I'll go over spiral wedging and throwing a 5-pound bowl. And we'll use some of the delicious Baco red clay that we have in our studio. So it's in the bins by the whiteboard, and feel free to use this stuff. It's really wonderful. It's been sitting for a while. It gets excellent color in the gas kiln and other kilns as well. Right? So I've pre-weighed my clay here to 5 pounds. Right? So you can continue to do ram's head wedging if that works for you, right? Again, just to revisit, this is what the motion looks like from the side. It's kind of rocking back and forth, gently pressing the clay. When you start making larger work or wedging up more clay to be used, spiral wedging works well to wedge more clay. So I'm pushing with my right, I'm capping with my left, and then the clay is spiraling in on itself, pushing out all the little air bubbles, if there are any, and cracking them right here. So you can make it look really pretty too, right? So if I get that nice spiral design of folding in on itself or spiraling inwards, this is a good sign that I'm doing it correctly. And as I come out of this, I'll just slowly roll out the seams, and so I have a nice mound of clay to work with. And now moving to the wheel, cover your ears. So we're going to use a bat for this because it's a little larger, bowls are nice and wide, and moving a large bowl from the wheel head onto a board can taco it even more than anticipated. So we have these bat pins that will go into the wheel head, and then we'll put a masonite bat with 2 holes on top, and we'll just be able to lift the bat off the wheel from there. So I have these next to my station, and I can hand them out to you. So let me know if you want these, if you're throwing larger and wanting to keep your work, right? Anything over 3 pounds roughly, it's good to use a bat. So in putting these on, I have this little hole right here that's filled with clay. If you simply dip your bat pin and clean it off so it doesn't have that clay in its threads, I dip it again, and that water will kind of eat at that clay and get it soft enough so that you can press through. And and the wing nut will go right underneath. So you may have to awkwardly kind of put your head down there to get these two lined up properly. It's an awkward angle. Let me see if I can get away with it. Aha. Right. So take your time in doing this. The wing nuts are on there to keep the bat pin in place because it will move around from friction on the wheel. Right? So we just want to make sure that our bat pins are secure so they don't pop up and, you know, hit your palm when you're throwing. And then, simple as that, masonite board will lay right on top, and we're ready to put our splash pan on and get to throwing. Okay, so I always want to wet down my surface before I start, right? Cleans, that little bit of moisture will hold my clay in place. And since I have 5 pounds, I want to kind of slap center this into place. So with the wheel moving at a slow rate, just slapping your hands evenly, just to get this on center enough. It's really not perfectly on center, but it'll work nonetheless, right? It'll help, especially if you have like a massive amount of it that's completely off center. You can get it pretty much on center to your liking. Okay. So have fun with that. And then everything else is pretty much the same. It's just a little bit more clay, so it's going to push back a little bit more. So you want to use more force, right? And this is really where posture is important. So keeping your arms in, my left hand, my left arm is really locked into my body here. And I can really throw my weight into the clay, right? So same thing with cone wedging. I'll add pressure at the base between both my hands and then squeeze and make a cone, right? Because it's easier to center a little bit of clay than it is the whole piece. And then from here, compress down. Compress with my right hand, and then press in with my left. If you hear that noise, kind of sounds like a horse gallop. That's just the bat sliding around on the wheel head from the pressure So we'll do this one more time. Making my cone and then compressing down. I'm pressing down from the top, but I'm also pressing down with my left hand, right? Assisting with my right. And then when things kind of mound out a little bit, my left hand will work more on the side. And right, so I just want to get this nicely centered for a bowl of this size. Having a mound of clay that's a little wider than it is taller is perfect. I'll always use my finger widths as a measurement in height from the bat to the top. So usually when I throw bowls, I'll have 3 finger widths in height. And from here, I want to open. So with my thumb pressing inward, I support with my right hand and push in with my sponge. Right? Be careful not to go down too far. It's easy to drill all the way down to the bottom when you open the first time, or any other time for that matter when you go back to it. So if you have a thick bottom, thick base, you can always trim that, right? So err on the cautious side. And if, again, you ever want to check that thickness, use your needle tool. You can spear down all the way until you hit that base, and then using your fingernail, your thumbnail, you can measure out how thick that base is. This is a little on the thick side for me, but that's okay. Like when I trim this up, I want to have a nice height on that base, so we'll leave it. Okay. Then we'll begin to open. So whatever works for you best. I like opening with my thumb, and I'll pull in, supporting with my right hand. All right. So it's going to be a pretty wide bowl here. So having a nice wide opening is totally fine. And I have this really nice groove that's happening on the sides here. Right, so it'll give me a nice area to pull and lift. So adding water, compressing that bottom. So people may have been experiencing what's called S-cracks. You get an S-crack in the bottom of your piece if it's not properly centered, like if it's not properly compressed all the way. You'll have this section of clay that opens up on itself. So that's why cone wedging is so important. It'll compress that clay close to the base, and then when you push that cone back down, it will center everything up, right? And what will also help with that is compressing the base between your fingers and a sponge. So if you notice, I've been throwing with a sponge. I get a little bit more surface area to throw with, and it helps, right? So from here, I'll begin my first pull. So I'll pull outward, right? Even just compressing that clay in from the outside, you can see how I'm prepping the wall for a pull, right? I've got this groove down here between my finger and sponge, and then I'm going to compress the clay together with my hand and pull up and out. So you don't need to go too fast, right? And as I pull up and out, my pressure will gradually decrease. And it's just one of those things you just gotta feel out for yourself. Right? There's all these little micro touches that are happening with when I'm pulling the walls. But the overall theme is squeezing the clay together on both sides and lifting up, right? So pressing in, and pinching that clay together, squeezing that clay together, and then pulling up and out. So you might find that you'll get yourself a nice wobble. That's totally fine, right? This is shaping up nicely. I think I'm going to leave the rim a little thick, so I won't continue my pull all the way through. Remember, the less that you work it, the higher success rate you'll have, right? So with this bowl, I can do a number of things right now, and one of them, what I want to do is clean up the sides a little bit. So with my rib, I'll place that metal edge on the outside and then just slowly work my way up. It takes off that slip, right? I'm not doing anything different to if I were throwing a 1 pound bowl. Right, this 5 pounders just takes a little bit more time. So this is prepping my shaping. I'm just taking off those throw rings on the outside, and then I'll now begin shaping from the inside. So I'll start at the top and I'll support the outside with my left hand, and I'll just let that clay wall glide over the surface, that edge of my rib, right? And you can see the shape that's coming from that. And from here, I'm going to press downward and really round this guy out. So the question is here, like, how wide do I want to make this? Right? These could be some really nice mixing bowls. So you can take a step back and see where you're at clay-wise, form-wise, I kind of have this hip right here coming out of the bottom that I can clean up. When I trim. There's a couple things that I like that's happening here. My rim is just slightly flared out, so I think I'll try to keep that a little bit. I'll clean that up and accentuate. I won't press too much further on that base. I hope you can see how wide you can stretch this, right? When you stretch a bowl, stretch a pot, the thing that you'll affect most is height. So the wider the bowl is that I stretch, the shorter it will become in height, right? So I have some really nice wide, tall sides, and I think I'll call that good. So for a little extra style, you can flare out your rim, right? So the profile kind of looks like this a little bit. So with your rib, starting at the top, just focus on that edge. And I'm supporting the bottom, the outside edge with my left hand, and I'm just pulling that over. Now you can see it creates a really nice line. The thing to be careful about this is not taking it too far. If you take it past a point of about like 45 degrees, it can fall on you. So that's where I'll stop. I'll take my sponge, wet it down, clean up the edge a little bit, and that is where I'm going to leave that. If I work it anymore, it is going to flop over on me, right? So last thing I'll do is trim off the base, that extra clay that I don't need. So using my wood knife, angling it down and away to remove the excess to help with trimming later. Then from here, what I want to do is I always want to clean up my surface so I'm not dragging any extra slip through my bottom, and then just cut it off like you would any other bowl, right? So 5-pound bowl. People have had ideas for a project to do nesting bowls. So if you start with 1 pound of clay, go 2 pounds, go 3 pounds, go 4 pounds. The before getting to a 5-pound bowl, I recommend at least starting with 3 pounds and seeing how that goes. 5 pounds is quite a bit. Like, you got a lot of surface area right here to cover, right? And you know, take into account leaving your base on the thick side and then throwing a little bit thicker. Like these walls that I'm throwing are about that thick before I stretch it out, because that will also thin things out. It's not a crime to throw thick with clay. Okay, so we'll see you soon.